Came and told me, okay, there is something called a server-side JavaScript. You can run the browser on your server and you can compile the application sent to your browser, So it would make sense, but today times are different, right? So my idea is to ensure that I'm able to pass on all the excitement about server-side JavaScript. Why JavaScript is so amazingly beautiful. I want to pass on all that knowledge. And then as we head on, since I'm a security guy, and I do security research as a security architect for Yahoo, my first task is to find what is the worst part, what is the bad part, and what is the good part. So although my talk says good, bad, and ugly, I'm going to start with ugly, bad, and good, right? So I think let's get started. So what do you, how old do you think is server-side JavaScript? Any guesses?
At Netscape, there was something called LiveScript.
Right. Which year was that?
96.
Awesome. Right. And yeah, so precisely, it is not as old as this woman, but definitely was the first time server-side JavaScript came into picture was 1996. It did not take off. Then Mozilla came up with something called as Rhino. And after that, there have been 50 plus attempts of doing something on the server-side JavaScript. But something went wrong, right? What was that? Things didn't work out. 50 plus attempts from all big companies, lot of effort, did not work out. Why? JavaScript, like it was to me a year back, was probably a stupid language. I thought, why do we need to use a language just for animation? Why do I learn a language for animation, events, and doing stuff like that? Why do learn a language just for UI? And anyway, that is a JavaScript. It probably is a subset of Java and it's better than Java. I was completely wrong. I was completely foolish, right? And that was the case with a lot of people, right? So we'll not delve into all the stories because if I start talking about each of those items, it might take probably 3 or 4 hours. Which was a class I took at Yahoo for long hours to discuss why it is so different. The bigger issue was the engines that powered the browsers were very slow. Did not have a browser war. There was no compelling war going on between companies to really make blazing browsers, right? So that was another reason. Another big reason I figured out was that JavaScript is a very misunderstood and very underrated language. I will see why. It is, if you ask me, I've been learning JavaScript not since too long ago. It has been probably like a month ago or so, really learning it, and not just for doing a process scripting or stuff like that. And I'm completely in love with it just because of its power and its expressiveness, right? So what has changed now? So from a rocket going wrong to something like Node.js coming in. And 2011, Node.js was voted as the best technology, right? So why it happened? We had a browser war. So Microsoft thought they won the game. So they had IE6 and nothing happened after that. Then Firefox came in, and then you had a lot of guys coming in and pushing out really blazing fast, super speed browsers, right? So one of the issues you had a decade and a half ago was not there anymore, right? So you had Google V8, which is that is what Node.js is powered by. Then you have SpiderMonkey, which is again a good browser, a good JS engine. You have Chakra from IE, I think 7 plus. I think the biggest reason beyond these were 2 books. One is the JavaScript Definitive Guide by David. It is a really good guide if you really want to understand JavaScript. If you want to program in JavaScript, I can bet you don't have to search for reviews, and you can just go and read this book and figure out how good JavaScript is. And if you think that it is very difficult to program securely in JavaScript, if you think there's anything possible in Earth not possible to do in JavaScript, you can read probably the good parts. Because that's a bit of exaggeration. But the idea is, good parts really teaches you. It is by Douglas Crockford, who is my colleague at Yahoo. I think everybody knows him, right? Douglas Crockford. So he essentially invented a lot of the techniques based on which today we have Node.js. We'll talk about that. Alright, so why is it so hot? Right? I won't delve into why the speed is good, why the performance is good, and why other reasons, right? These are top 3 reasons, which not the security guys talk outside, right? These are like more for business people. Just to give you a snapshot, I'm not going to share about like all these statistics, but if you look at speed-wise, it is blazingly fast compared to PHP, Java, anything you talk about, right? Performance-wise, it is super good because you have single thread. You don't have multi-thread. So if you're a startup or if you're like you want to compete with a lot of, especially in a social network, you can really have low resources and you can do a lot of stuff with those resources, right? And as a security guy, I've been doing security for over 10 years. And it has been a pathetic challenge for me to understand every language because I used to do code review for X and Y tomorrow, Z next day, and probably something else the other day, right? I had to learn ASP, PHP, C, C++, Perl, .NET, Java, PHP, anything, right? And I think that's the same problem that even the software industry had. So what they did was, why not have a JavaScript as one universal language, right? So we'll see what it comes to. We'll talk about that. So essentially the idea is that JavaScript is one universal language now. You've heard about NoSQL databases, MongoDB, CouchDB. So you can do your databases in JavaScript, one language. You can do your business logic in one language, Node.js. You can do your front end in one language, JavaScript, right? So one language will do them all, right? This is what it looked like in 2011, November, when I started studying about Node.js. So simple, very basic site, high-end community, high-end technical stuff going around. This is what has happened within 3 months. This is the adoption level. So I'll start with Yahoo because I know very well about it. So we are coming up with a platform called Cocktails within a month or so. I can't disclose a lot about it, but believe it is super fantastic. If you go on the internet and figure out what Cocktails is, it can give you device independence. I was talking to a few of the friends yesterday, Love, Gurse, and all the guys, and I'm pretty excited about it. And this something is going to change the game a lot. Right now, if you're writing an application for iPad, let's say for a functional feature phone, for a, let's say, a BlackBerry playbook or something like that, you can write like multiple applications and depend on those guys when they change the OS, they will change their applications. But now this is going to give you virtually device independence. You write one application, it works everywhere. What else you want, right? So let's come back. So LinkedIn, eBay, Microsoft, everybody is using it big time. It is known publicly. So it's not experimental technology anymore, right? So I'm going to spend 5 minutes and try my best to share what I know about Node.js. I'm not claiming to know that I know Node.js very well. I took a good number of days to really put my teeth in and understand what exactly they're trying to do. I'm going to share that knowledge in 5 minutes. So if you don't get it, it is okay. So the 3 base fundamentals, if you know that right now, you probably know Node.js to a decent extent. And those are event-driven, asynchronous, single-threaded, right? Some of these are done by, because of V8 you can have single-threaded stuff, and other things are because Douglas invented, okay, you could do a event-driven programming in JavaScript, and you can write asynchronous stuff, non-blocking IO and all. It did not make a lot of sense in the front end that time, but at server side it makes a huge difference. Let's see why. This is what a traditional program looks like. Let's say PHP or whatever language it is, right? Do we have a laser here? Anyways, I'm going to use my mouse. So what happens in a traditional code is you're calling a DB, or you're calling an input IO, or you're calling a file, right? These are like heavy operations. In a synchronous programming, until your DB is done, or until your file operation is done, you cannot move to the next statement, right? So this is like a blocking IO. You're blocking your application, you're blocking your server, right? And it's not a parallel programming, it's synchronous programming. And by doing that, you wait a lot of CPU cycles. That's the reason if you see, you say, okay, I have like all cutting edge blade servers and XYZ, still I do not get good speed. The reason is this. right? And then what node is? It is asynchronous, event-driven, callback architecture. Let's see what that is. So a typical code in Node.js will look like this. You can call a command for database. It will do the database, let's say it's a file upload or reading command or database command. It calls this and moves to the next statement. So there's a parallel processing. So one call is done, it's called event driven, you fire an event and goes to the next statement. And this guy is doing a file IO heavy processing. It's not a block your application, you can like keep running the synchronous. This is a non-blocking IO. Your reads are not getting blocked. Non-blocking IO, synchronous, right? And how do you get back? Because this one thing is running here, one thing is running there. How do you get back? Something called callback. So whenever this read is finishing, it will call back the parent function, and this calling read from database back and printing data. So you essentially have parallel processing, asynchronous, event-driven, non-blocking IO, right? I'll take another example. So essentially what we had was we did not have to wait for input. That's what. So what Lincoln has done is I think they are using Node.js for file upload, blazingly fast. So we are not waiting for do something to wait for the database operation to finish. Then you can do print data when the database is done, right? So that's called callback. And just even although you have just one process, one thread, you can still do concurrent connections. That's the power of Node.js, right? So let me take one example. Let's say, about this conference. Let's say I submit a CFP, okay? And it comes to, let's say, Asim. And Asim is saying, okay, I need to wait until I receive, a feedback from, let's say, the panel, right? And this guy is waiting, Asim is waiting now. Now, until the panel says whether the CFP is good or not, they keep on, Asim keeps on waiting, right? And if these guys don't go and leave, then the entire thing is dead. In a real environment, this happens, right? That's why you have multiple threads, because you can like keep on processing. But in real life, we do not have those scenarios. We do not have multiple people. We cannot wait, right? And let's just clear this concept. Three things, right? So non-blocking IO, don't wait for heavy operations, parallel processing, callbacks. That's all Node.js is about, fundamentally. All right, moving on. So what is missing? So you don't have a web framework. You have, think of it like a Linux kernel. You have Linux kernel, but you don't have all the recipes, all the goodies on top of it. So you can't use it as is, right? Remind you of NetBSD, more of it. So that's why you have a web framework called Express. It's probably the most popular framework right now. You have templating engines called Mustache, Jade, HTML, many are there, which give you the MVC architecture. Then DB server, by default, it does not support MySQL. There are hacks around it, but the idea is to promote NoSQL. Now, the good thing about NoSQL is if you use something like MongoDB, CouchDB, doing SQL injection is like very difficult, if at all possible. Okay. So, and then if something is missing, you get something called NPM. Think of NPM like RPMs, right? So, Node Package Manager. So, whatever you need, extra goodies you get from NPM. That is what the entire stuff is about. Now, what happens when you hold things incorrectly? When you have power and when you do something, just put a grenade on yourself, what's happened? Right? It's going to fire back on you. Alright. This is what happens with JavaScript. It happened to be big time. Right? So, my first few programs in Node.js, it was a self-denial service. Right? So, in multiple variations, all unique variations of it. So, I was reading Douglas Cockford's site, and he mentions that JS is so expressive that anybody who wants to do anything can do it without learning language. Right? It is so powerful. It's a reality. You ask any of the JavaScript guys, so even if they do not know JavaScript, they can get things done in JavaScript. It is so powerful, so expressive. It is like it has 20,000 different ways of doing one thing. Okay? So, other thing is JavaScript is a very misunderstood language. So the guys who know how to get things done do not know that things that cannot get done can also be done by using the correct methodologies. Right? So it's a very misunderstood language. It's very powerful, but people do not know about the power of it. Okay? So yeah, so Node.js is like Spider-Man, right? So if you have power, have some responsibility. All right, I want to start with the ugly part. So what is the ugly part? JavaScript has something called as implied globals. So by default, anything you declare, variable, function, object, array, anything, by default is global. And we are not used to this architecture. If we talk about server side, I go to my application, I only want sessions to be related to myself, and based on sessions I get stuff out of it. Now what will happen if I can see what, let's say, everybody's data is, right? So it has a shared memory, it has shared globals. So all the global variables are shared. So we'll talk about what the real exploits are. That's the first biggest issue. It is not to do with Node.js, it is just inheritance from JavaScript. Abuse is namespace pollution, we'll talk about it. Now again, this is something you're going to see more and more exploits in the future. It will all depend on how the community takes up. There is a big push right now in Yahoo and across big companies, how do you save globals? Right? Because if like one bad programmer unintentionally, maliciously, any bad library just messes with one global, your entire application is a host compromise. It is very serious. Right? So ugly parts, the second one is eval. People tell me, you know what, you have these functions in PHP as well. But this is eval is huge than PHP's command execute function. People use it for doing things they do not know how to do with the regular things, right? So they misuse it a lot. And this feature is insanely popular. People use it for anything. I've seen it in my experience, not just for JSON parsing, they use it for almost even the square bracket notation because they do not know that it exists in reality. So that leads to host compromise, and then you have privileges. So by default, Node.js runs in the privilege of the user, and mostly as root because you want to get things done, you don't want all those errors and all, right? That's what I've seen. And that's the reason why Apache ran as global nobody. We all know buffer overflow exploits, anything if you hack into the main process, you get the root shell, right? So these are some disadvantages. I would say the worst parts of Node.js. Let's delve into them. So these are live demos with the URL, but let's understand what is happening here. So what happens in Node.js is, let's say I declared a variable. Now this is my first JavaScript file, which is going to call multiple JS files from here. I'm creating my web server here. When I do that, if I declare anything there, by default is global. Right? There's no way you can protect this. And if there is, and let's say you have multiple files, and somebody is calling the same variable for performing a security action or authentication or anything, you do a pollution, something will go wrong. So examples I'm showing today are not malice, they are like very basic examples, fun examples just to show the idea behind it. In reality, they are going to be extremely serious, they are going to cause issues which are not only hard to detect, but even hard to protect. Because you can't fix this so easily. It's a big loophole in JavaScript. Alright. So what you will see in PHP is such a function for every request in every browser will be 111 for a variable. But if you go to your, I don't think everybody has internet here, but if I go to, you can try this URL on your phones, this will just keep on increasing. So just imagine there is a variable, it could be anything, right? So essentially you are sharing your global namespace with all the users. So there would be leakages, there would be bypasses, but bigger than that, the coders, unintentional coding, malicious coding, libraries, they're going to have bigger issues. Because in JavaScript you can do object overriding, you can do tons of things, right?
You push this 28 as a global variable on the node server side also.
And actually, yeah, so that we, yeah. So let me pull it up. Actually, this probably is better. So what you see here is, so if you want to make something as local, right, you need to declare within a function scope. Again, I'm not going to delve into what a function scope is. So this looks like C. In C you have something called as block scope within the brackets. In JavaScript you have a function scope, right? So what that means is this LCL is available only within the function. So what happens is when my JavaScript, my Node.js receives a request from browser A, let's say it receives a request from Goodsay, it calls this function, right, and prints this. So local variable is 1, but global is shared, right? So that's why it's increasing. Now when Love logs from his side, what he sees is, he also sees local as 1 because it's declared within the function scope, but anything outside is global, right? So that's the idea.
And it will only reset when you restart the node service.
Exactly. And you don't want to do that.
Any way, I mean, please complete. So basically, the application that is returning the global variables to the user.
Yeah. And the bigger, I'll share more examples of it. I think that's the next one.
Okay.
So idea is this is just to show you demonstrate the global and local setting. Now, what happens in reality is, this is a very common thing. You want to have people overriding. It is a really common thing. If you go to any of the sites today, you just open Firebird, go to console, you see a lot of JavaScript errors. Every site has that. And JavaScript is so good, it is like very fault tolerant. It's like, okay, let's run with it, right? So this thing, calling global variables, overriding it, resetting it, reassigning it is a very common thing. People are used to it. What happens? Let's say one of the examples. It's very likely to happen. So model browser, the security model is like SOP what you have in browser. Okay. So let's say we have Bob. Bob writes a program where he sets is valid equal to true. Now he forgot to declare as var. Even if in the function scope, if you do not call a variable as var, it is by default global. It is called implied variables. And if you go to most of the applications, they do program like this. They do not call var there as well. And now Alice wrote a program actually making a security decision based on what is the value of is valid, right? Now in runtime, and you can't find the issues in JavaScript even by using stuff like when you like running analysis. You figure these issues out only in runtime. So when in runtime, let's say the process flow is such that Bob's code ran just before Alice's code, and you have a security bypass. This is a very, very common example. You want to have much more bigger issues. Let's say you have some of your, let's say if you're using, let's say like Express, then you could override the functions. Anybody using that framework will be compromised by default, right? And how this would happen? You would essentially have, let's say, a malicious library, because ultimately, Node is so new, you would end up using something from the internet. You do not know who the coder is. You might just, and the way Google VA, the SOP is, every JS running has access to the entire global namespace, has the same privileges like the other code, right? So essentially, it's like you are trusting a code completely that from outside. So if you do that, it's an insecure library, let's say, which I know where the security issues are exploited, and if I'm a bad guy, I can really like a cool library, like a Trojan, people install it, and something goes wrong. Okay. So yeah, these are this is something which is very primed for exploit in future. Okay. So second one is eval. So we all know eval is evil for various reasons. Why it is evil is because it treats data as code, right? Think SQL injection. It's very powerful. That is why it is very, very popular as well. People use it for various reasons beyond imagination, because they do not know the other ways to get things done in JavaScript, right? Exploit again is code execution, command execution. So somebody asked me, this is already known, equal to process scripting, but here you're doing a post compromise. This is huge than process scripting, right? And the bigger part is eval has cousins, set interval, set timeout, new function. Use any of these, and you take user stuff into it, you're doomed, right? You host compromise. And now delve into how to host compromise. Now see a simple example. And I was looking at evaluating some of the code in NPM, some libraries, and they're using eval. Douglas Crockford, and you have mentioned there are very few reasons why you need to use web, right? So it all depends. So even if your code is good, if you take something from there, you cannot know how to behave. All right. So now try this. Please try it, but be nice. Okay. So let's say you want to type something here. Let's say 1, and I get back as 1. Okay. But if I be nasty, I'm going to put a server command response.end. Right? So you can do not just like we're doing process scripting, which it is misunderstood for the server side. You could essentially send a command, do a file upload, upload shells, take access to the command shell, or you could do anything. You could essentially change the server global, you could do anything actually. It's like a forced compromise. Alright. So runtime privilege, so I tried Node.js, I tried Express.js, most of the frameworks, by default they run with the system privilege. Right? This is a very, we all know why it's bad. So if we have if you had something like hash doors, which does not impact big time, but if you had something which gives you a shell access, you will end up with a root shell access. In case of Node.js. So these are the ugly parts. Coming to the bad parts, there are actually 3. I put them as 4 because I'm very passionate about the 4th point. The first 2 are the will and switch, which is very specific to JavaScript. We'll talk about it. Switch is a known thing. We've been seeing it in C, it is there in PHP, it is a universal fork. We'll talk about why those things are bad. We'll talk about why single thread, which is one of the tenets of Node.js, can hit back, why it is bad as well. Then you expect any new technology that is coming to not introduce the same security issues they're living up with. Right? Process scripting is probably the #1 issue, at least I believe so. And Node.js has not done anything to solve it. It is just using the same derivative of templating engine from Django and from other platforms. It has not done the context-sensitive auto-centralization, right? Which now you have available even in open source. So they have not done those coding at all. Okay, so taking one by one. So this is going to take a couple of minutes. So I'm going to go a little slow here. It's a very important concept, and this is something which is going to screw many applications in future, which is used as a shorthand. And why do they use as a shorthand is because when you write secure applications, when you want to avoid globals, we actually end up using globals if you use with, because let's say you have something like bing, bang, tic-tac-toe. You don't want to write bing, bang, tic-tac-toe for every line. So you want to call with bing, bang, tic-tac-toe, and then you want to call like names and whatever, right? So shorthand is going to be used very widely. Now there are good ways to do the same thing, but people use this because this is very popular. Now what happens is, let's say you have a typo. So again a very common thing, especially on the common parameters. That's like name, age, I is my favorite parameter, X.
Actually, it is not that easy to do. Is there any way to make it?
Okay, so let me do one edit. Oh, I'll go to the code actually. Let's go to the code. Thanks for reminding that. Okay, so let's say you have two global variables. That is again a fun application, right? This is not really a full application, fun application. I'm writing my first application. I say names equal to my first Node app. Browser equal to works best on Firefox 4, Chrome 10, and IE7 because you HTML5 and all those goodies. And then I do some processing based on what the username supplied is from the session parameters or what the browser is, and then I give a message, welcome message saying, okay, this is my first Node app. It works best on, and so welcome Joe, and so this is names, which is my first Node app. Welcome name, which is Joe, which should be Joe, right? This app works on little stuff like browsers, right? But what you did was essentially now JavaScript is very fault tolerant. Now although you do not have names and browsers in this object, right? It is name and browser. So you have an extra S, a typo. What will happen is JavaScript will say, okay, let me handle it. It will trace back on the higher scopes, and wherever it finds a match, it assigns that variable to it, right? So in this case, it happens in the global. So what we'll see is,
And if there are no variables, it creates a global variable.
that's a good question. I didn't try that actually. I think it probably will. It shows as undefined, I guess. Yeah.
I think it could create a global variable. Yeah.
I think it could be. I think. Yeah. I think it could be. Yeah. That's worth trying. Yeah. So yeah. So you'll say, this is Joe. Welcome. You didn't tell me, and this app works best on IE4, IE5, IE6. Basically, example. In reality, what you'll have is you will end up showing sensitive data or showing some garbage stuff. It all depends on the context of what you're using with for. And usually you use with for complex stuff, complex processing, and that is where things start going wrong. So yeah, so avoid using with. Then denial of service by default is very easy because you have single thread environment. If one thread goes down, it's a denial of service by default, right? And something like C, if you compile it, it gives you a lot of warnings, right? Not just the errors, it gives you warnings. JavaScript does that a lot. That's why you have stuff like linters, like JS lint and all, which tells you all these bad coding practices. Okay. Now, let's say you have a huge piece of code and somebody did not do correct exception handling. Now, exception handling is very, very important in the context of Node.js. If you do not do it, you crash your node. This is a self-inflicted loss. That's one scenario. If you call a wrong function, if you call something, you do not take a variable properly. So let's take an example. So let's say in the same place, the same. All right. So let's say I try something as something. And so essentially it is dead. It won't connect. So you had this whole crash. So you need to handle user parameters, and you need to handle what your code is, right? Because you don't have the facility of compiling the entire code and figuring out where that error is. So it's one of the other issues with Node.js. So I tried the same stuff in Express. It does good exception handling by default. However, it has a DOS when you call a non-existent function or stuff within your code. So you cannot do a DOS from the browser from a user, but you can have a bad code which can put an out service. And a bigger application, it's very difficult to catch. It's not like a C or something you can figure out where the errors are. Okay. So this is something, a common thing we all know. I thought to cover just for sharing. We have the same issue in Node.js as well. So this is a fall through statement switch. So unless you specify a break, it will keep on running. Okay. So let's say an application which gives a discount, and for a basic user it gives 10%, for a bigger user 30%, for Yahoo 50%, and for others no discount. Right. So what happens is, since you do not have a break statement and you did a processing, okay, so let's say you came to know that, okay, this user ID is 1000 and the customer tag is valid customer, and what you needed was you wanted to have a break statement here because you had a match. A break statement was missed out and you simply overran to the next statement where there was a break and you end up giving more discount. Right? Again, a very simple example. But if you look at the context of what could go wrong, it could be, again, depending on what you're trying to do. So again, not something I would say new. This is very a known thing of like PHP or stuff, but this is just to keep a note of. Okay. So the last one, which I felt really should have been there with Node.js. So we all know cross scripting is a common issue. And what Node.js has done is it gives you HTML, Express.js, it gives you Mustache, it gives you Jade, all the templating frameworks which by default does an output escaping for HTML context, right? Now there's a misconception, people think that if you do an HTML output escaping, your process scripting issue is gone. When reality does not go, right? So you have a number of issues like URL context, you can do a JavaScript alert, you can do a process scripting issue from there. You can do in a CSS context as well. You can do in body onload functions by calling the onload handlers and on start handlers. You can do when the attribute is not quoted, unquoted attributes within the JS context or in the HTML context. So all these issues are there. You have much more issues than these. The new technologies are there. Now Google has auto escape, which does the context auto escape. It figures out what is going on and fixes it automatically. So it is not there in Node.js. So me and my friend, what we did was we essentially ported Google auto escape onto Node.js. We are still experimenting to make it streamlined, and so essentially my belief is that security should be transparent, right? And security should be usable. So currently, this module Joe is transparent, but it is not very usable. So ideally, I would want that people who are using Mustache should be able to use Joe in the same manner. It should not be a different change big change for them. So we're trying to use the same syntax and calling in the same fashion. Okay. Again, it's just a beginning. So I spent like a month on this. Still research in progress. I was reading on the Google V8 engine's scoping of domains, and there's something called as set security token. If you do that, you can exchange tokens between two applications. Let's say in a hosted environment or in a single node command, you have multiple applications on a single server, right? And if somebody is doing a cross domain, they would essentially. So let's say I want to communicate with one application, but because I did not set it properly, I could end up doing it with multiple applications. Same concept as calls or cross domain XML, right? Same concept. Sorry,
frame navigation works out the same.
Like what?
Frame navigation.
Yeah.
So when from one frame I try to navigate to another frame,
Yeah.
there are a few secure techniques.
Yeah.
Set security token is one of them, and these are one of those in frame navigation.
Yeah. This is in Google V8. I'm not experimented, but you can do a cross domain between two applications on a hosted environment. So they can talk essentially, they can share globals, they can share everything. Okay, so this is something I'll be trying next, and then we have NPM packages. I looked at a few of them, which were JavaScript, so they had eval and all the bad stuff. I ran JS lint on it. So if you're planning to include some applications onto your products, you could run JS lint on them. Be strict, just do not accept any use of eval. And other things I spoke about, especially globals and all those things, because you never know what is going to global what, right? So be very sure of those. Trickier thing is you can also have C libraries. So how do you go into it, right? So it's like a difficult thread to decide all NPM libraries you want to use. Other thing is JSLint has a lot of other best practices that it reports. Now, how many of those are exploitable in the context of server JavaScript? So there are things like automatic semicolon insertion, it's called ASI in JavaScript. So by default, if you do not do where a double quotes, do not put a semicolon, JavaScript does it by default automatically. Now it has some security issues that I can think of. You have a return statement, and you have two cases to do. So return expects a brace immediately after that. Otherwise, you get a semicolon. So you can have unexpected results if you do not use semicolon properly. Right. There are many more things that could go wrong. All right, solutions. I think people need to understand single-threaded, event-driven, asynchronous, callback architecture. If you do not do that, you're going to have applications in Node.js going to be like self-analysis applications. Right? Use JSLint. Use secure development frameworks. So there are not too many right now, but I think they'll be evolving. Have a coding guideline as to what not to use, what to use, because JSLint will throw like a ton of stuff at you. It does not give you a rating like high, medium, low, right? So you should figure out what is important. Like for me, eval is definitely not acceptable. But probably having a for loop with so and so is fine. Right? So you need to have those classifications. And we do not have industry right now. You can use ECMAScript 5 with the latest Node.js. You can do, you can save globals, you can freeze, you can do all this stuff. You can do that. But again, it's not there by default. You should do it. So there are ways. All right. So having spoken about the worst parts, the bad parts, let's talk about the good parts. Good parts, I couldn't find many yet. I think it's very beautiful. Just trying to see the good part from security perspective. There are a few of them. So I remember NetBSD when I started using, I could just install a kernel. After that, I couldn't even attach my pen drive. I need to install a driver for that. That is what Node.js is. If you use HTTP server, you can do only a few things. You cannot do routing, you cannot do other stuff. You need to have all those things called separately. So you essentially build your web server. Now, if you are not knowing how to do that properly, you might end up screwing up. But the advantage is, if you know properly, you don't need to worry about the issue that we had with IIS, with Apache, or with other browsers. Like for instance, people installed Tomcat, and I have tried to install Tomcat because they had admin application running, manager application running with default passwords, right? And we all know web dev security issues in IIS, right? So you have all these extra modules which you might never need. So in context of Node.js, you essentially put what you want. Okay. So yeah, so attack surface is pretty minimal in Node.js. So even like the root directory, you define what can be called, what can be accessed. So unless you really want something to be accessed, it cannot be. So by default, it is secure on the infra side. All right. So yeah, that is the end of my talk. End of a beginning. I'm still finding out stuff on it. So I keep writing on my blog, and I do some posts on my Twitter account. So if you want to figure out more about Node.js, you can touch base here. And that's my colleague who works at Yahoo as well, and he puts his research as well. So thanks, and like to have any questions?
I have two questions. One is with I can execute JavaScript code on the server side using Rust, but would I be able to run shell level commands? Or do I have to first upload something, then do the shell level execution, or I can directly do shell level execution?
So there is so I did not delve into it because that's a similar talk that gentleman from Brandon Sullivan, I think he gave in Black Hat, when he mentioned about how you could call a native file or API which comes with Node.js, and you could upload files to it. Or and you can even run system commands. So you could do that because now you're running a root, you can run system commands. Well, so there are areas to do that.
Does the same origin or same domain policy apply to the server side?
Yes.
Node.js?
Yes. It runs on Google Create.
That would, if you're able to bypass that, then probably shells and everything can be.
No, shell you can do. So I think I'll probably send a link to you guys. So Brian Sullivan, I think he actually gave a talk on Black Hat about that. So that's like one entire talk on how to really get a host compromise via eval.
And on accelerating from different apps within the same hosting environment, you said there's like a set security context or something like that.
Yeah.
So I believe both the apps, if you want to do it, both are going to have to register something. Only then they can.
Exactly.
If one.
So that's just something I was looking at, and what I figured out was that you can, the main app that wants to talk can set a security token, and if somebody has it, they can call it. So it does not take
If it doesn't declare a token, nobody can.
But if I want token, I can expose it.
So there's no default password like default token or something.
No, that's not. All right. So there's no more questions. Thanks a lot for attending the last talk here. Thank you. I think we should go ahead and straight over there from here or something. It will be up. It will be up only for the next few days because one year here, Amazon EC2 is expiring in a couple of days. So I can share it with whatever I have. Okay, cool. Look, I want to be a hero in the company because we adopted this technology. Thanks for your talk, man. Thank you.